Princess Valith Sindara of the Kithran Empire stood in the docking bay of Nexus Station and felt her silver blood boil with anger. She had traveled across 3 star systems for this peace summit. She had dressed in the finest silk robes of her people. She had prepared speeches that would shape the future of galactic politics. And now, standing before her, was the greatest insult she had ever received. A human. The creature was average in every way. He stood at what humans called 5'11", which was short compared to the 7-foot Kithran guards flanking him. His skin was a dull brown color, nothing like the beautiful silver shade of her own people. His eyes held no bioluminescent glow. His mind projected no telepathic aura. He wore simple black armor with a name badge that read Sergeant Marcus Cole and carried weapons that looked primitive compared to Kithran plasma rifles. "This is my protection?" Valith asked the Galactic Council liaison. She did not bother to speak quietly. She wanted the human to hear every word. "You assigned a human to guard a princess of the Kithran Empire?" The liaison, a nervous creature with 4 arms and green scales, bowed apologetically. "The Council believes in representing all member species in diplomatic security, Your Highness." "Sergeant Cole comes highly recommended." "Recommended by whom? Other humans?" Valith laughed coldly. "His species discovered fire while mine was building the first faster-than-light engines. They have been traveling among the stars for barely 200 years. We have been doing so for 20,000. Through all of this, Marcus Cole said nothing. He stood at attention, with his hands clasped behind his back and his eyes fixed on a point somewhere above her head. His face showed no emotion. If her words hurt him, he did not show it. This somehow made Valith angrier. Her Kithran guards, tall and beautiful with their glowing violet eyes and silver skin, looked at the human with barely hidden amusement. They were warriors born from centuries of genetic perfection. Each one could bench press a small vehicle. Each one had trained since childhood in 17 forms of combat. The human beside them looked like a child standing among giants. "Very well," Valith said with a wave of her hand. "He can carry my luggage." She walked past Marcus without another glance, her silk robes flowing behind her. Her guards followed, and Marcus fell into step at the rear of the group. He did not complain about the insult. He simply picked up 2 of her bags and carried them as instructed. The first day on Nexus Station was filled with diplomatic meetings and formal introductions. Valith met with representatives from 7 different species. She smiled and negotiated and played the political games her father had taught her. And throughout it all, she found ways to remind everyone how worthless her human guard was. During a meeting with the Vorath ambassador, she gestured toward Marcus and said, "Forgive his presence." The Council seems to think quantity matters more than quality in security arrangements. A massive insectoid creature with a shiny black shell clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his kind. "Humans," he said, "are such fragile things. I am surprised they survive long enough to reach adulthood." Marcus stood by the door and said nothing. Later, during a formal dinner, Valith deliberately switched to the Kithran language when giving instructions to her guards. She knew the human could not understand it. She watched his face for signs of frustration or confusion. She found neither. He simply stood at his post and watched the room with careful eyes. "He is like a statue," her handmaiden whispered. "Does he even have thoughts in that small brain?" "Probably not," Valith replied, loud enough for Marcus to hear. "I have seen service drones with more impressive capabilities. At least they can translate languages." That night, Marcus stood guard outside her quarters for 18 hours straight. He did not sit. He did not complain. He did not ask for food, or water, or rest. When Valith opened her door in the morning, he was still there, exactly where she had left him. "Did you stand there all night?" she asked, surprised, despite herself. "Yes, Your Highness. Why?" "There are other guards. You could have requested a shift change." "My duty is to protect you, Your Highness. That duty does not have shift changes." Valith stared at him for a long moment. There was something in his eyes she could not read. Something steady and unshakable. It made her uncomfortable, so she did what she always did when she felt uncomfortable. She attacked. Your duty, she said with a sneer, is to stay out of my way and try not to embarrass yourself further. Can you manage that, human? Yes, Your Highness. She walked past him, and he fell into step behind her. What Valeth did not know. What the council had not told her was why Marcus Cole had been selected for this assignment. It was not random. It was not an insult. It was a calculated decision based on something the older species had long forgotten. Humans were young. Humans were fragile. Humans lived short lives and had weak bodies and possessed none of the genetic advantages of the elder races. But they had something else. Something the ancient species had bred out of themselves over millennia of evolution. Humans had an irrational, an unshakable instinct to protect others. It did not matter if the person they protected was kind or cruel. It did not matter if that person respected them or despised them. Once a human decided someone was under their protection, they would die before letting harm come to them. Scientists called it persistence bonding. Soldiers called it duty. Poets called it the human heart. Marcus Cole had served in 3 combat zones. He had saved the lives of 17 people, including 2 who had treated him with cruelty. He had been shot, stabbed, poisoned, and burned. He had never quit. He had never complained. He had never stopped protecting the people assigned to his care. The council knew that Princess Valeth was a target. They knew that enemies would try to kill her during this summit. They needed someone who would protect her no matter what. Even if she made that protection as difficult as possible, they needed a human, and before the week was over, Marcus Cole would prove exactly why that choice had been made. He would face death with nothing but his primitive weapons and his stubborn human heart. He would fight enemies that should have killed him in seconds. And he would save the life of a princess who had done nothing but mock him. Because that was what humans did. They stayed. Peace Summit had brought together species that had been killing each other for thousands of years. Old hatreds filled the halls of Nexus Station like invisible poison. Smiles hid knives. Polite words covered ancient grudges. Everyone pretended to want peace while secretly planning for the next war. The Kithran Empire and the Voraith Dominion had the oldest hatred of all. 3 great wars had been fought between them. Billions had died. Planets had been destroyed. And though both sides had agreed to negotiate, there were those who would never forgive and never forget. Ambassador Kethrel of the Voraith was one of these. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His black carapace was scarred from battles fought centuries ago. His compound eyes held memories of Kithran soldiers burning his homeworld. When he looked at Princess Valeth, he did not see a diplomat. He saw an enemy. He saw revenge. Marcus Cole noticed Kethrel watching the princess. He noticed how the ambassador's secondary arms, usually hidden beneath formal robes, twitched with barely contained violence. He noticed the hatred that burned behind those compound eyes. Humans were not telepathic. They could not read minds or sense emotions through psychic bonds. But millions of years of evolution had given them something just as useful. They could read body language. They could sense danger through 1,000 tiny signals that other species had learned to ignore. Marcus Cole had survived 3 combat zones by trusting this instinct. And right now, his instinct was screaming that something was very wrong. On the 3rd night of the summit, a grand banquet was held in the main hall of Nexus Station. Crystal chandeliers floated overhead, held aloft by anti-gravity generators. Tables were loaded with delicacies from 100 worlds. Music played from instruments that had no names in human languages. It was beautiful. It was elegant. It was the perfect place for an assassination. Marcus stood at the edge of the room watching everything. The Kithran guards had taken positions near the princess, their tall forms creating a wall of silver flesh around her. They believed they were protecting her. They did not see the threat, but Marcus did. A servant moved through the crowd carrying a tray of drinks. The servant was small, with gray skin and large black eyes. One of the helper species that worked on Nexus Station. Nobody important. Nobody dangerous. Except Marcus noticed the slight tremor in the servant's hands. He noticed how the creature avoided eye contact with everyone. He noticed how it moved toward the princess's table with too much purpose, too much focus. Most importantly, he noticed the thin coating on the rim of one specific glass. It was almost invisible. A casual observer would never see it. But Marcus had spent years learning to notice things that wanted to stay hidden. He moved. The timing had to be perfect. If he acted too early, the assassin might escape. If he acted too late, the princess would be dead. Marcus walked across the room with his own drink in hand, calculating angles and distances. He timed his steps to intersect with the servant's path exactly 3 feet from the princess's table. The collision looked completely accidental. Marcus stumbled into the servant, his arms swinging wide. Drinks flew everywhere. Glass shattered on the polished floor. The poisoned drink splashed harmlessly across the ground, its deadly contents mixing with spilled wine and scattered ice. "You clumsy fool." The servant shrieked, scrambling to gather the broken pieces. Princess Valeth turned from her conversation, her violet eyes blazing with fury. She saw Marcus standing in the middle of the mess, drink stains on his uniform, broken glass at his feet. "You primitive idiot," she said through clenched teeth. "Do you have any idea what you have done? This is a diplomatic banquet, not a human tavern." Marcus bowed low. "My deepest apologies, Your Highness. I lost my footing. It will not happen again. See that it does not. Remove yourself to the back of the room. I do not want to look at you for the rest of the evening." "Yes, Your Highness." Marcus retreated to a dark corner near the service entrance. The Kithran guards laughed among themselves at the stupid human who could not even walk without falling. The princess returned to her conversation, putting the incident out of her mind. Nobody thanked Marcus Cole. Nobody realized what he had done. He had not expected them to, from his corner. He watched the servant slip away through a side door. He watched Ambassador Kethrel's expression shift from anticipation to confusion to cold, calculating anger. The assassination attempt had failed. The Vorth would need to try again. Marcus pulled out his communication device and sent a quiet message to station security. He reported the servant's description and the direction of escape. He did not explain why. He did not take credit. He simply provided information and returned to his duty. 3 hours later, station security found the servant's body in a maintenance shaft. Someone had killed the creature to ensure silence. The toxicology report revealed traces of Vorth nerve agent on the corpse's fingertips. This poison had no antidote. It could kill a Kithran in less than 30 seconds. It caused massive organ failure and left the victim aware and in agony until the very end. The report was filed. Security was increased. But nobody connected the dead servant to the spilled drinks at the banquet. Nobody realized that Princess Valeth had been seconds away from an agonizing death, and nobody knew that a human had saved her life. Marcus. Cole did not tell anyone. He did not expect reward or recognition. He had done his duty. That was enough. That night, he returned to his post outside the princess's quarters. He stood there for another 18 hours, watching every shadow, listening to every sound. His shoulder ached from the tension. His legs burned from standing so long. His eyes stung from lack of sleep, but he did not move. Inside her quarters, Princess Valeth prepared for bed. She complained to her handmaiden about the clumsy human who had ruined the banquet. She laughed about his stupidity. She wondered aloud why the council had cursed her with such a worthless guard. She had no idea that he had just saved her life. She had no idea that he would do so again. And she had no idea that before the week ended, she would owe him more than she could ever repay. Outside her door, Marcus Cole stood in the darkness and watched for threats. He did not think about her cruelty. He did not think about her mockery. He thought only about keeping her safe, because that was his duty, and humans did not abandon their duty ever. By the 5th day of the summit, Princess Valeth had begun to notice something strange about her human guard. It was a small thing at first, a question that itched at the back of her mind and refused to go away. Why was he still here? Kithran culture was built on rules of honor and exchange. If someone insulted you, you responded with equal force. If someone showed you disrespect, you withdrew your service. This was the way of civilized beings. This was how the universe worked. But Marcus Cole did not follow these rules. She had insulted him in front of ambassadors. She had mocked his species, his intelligence, his worth as a being. She had treated him worse than a servant, worse than a machine. Any Catherian in his position would have demanded reassignment within the first hour. Any being with self-respect would have refused to continue serving someone who despised them. Yet every morning, when she opened her door, there he was. Standing at attention, eyes alert. Ready to serve? It made no sense. Valeth found herself watching him during quiet moments. She studied his face when he thought no one was looking. She searched for signs of anger, resentment, hidden hatred. She found none. His expression remained calm and steady, like the surface of a still lake. On the fifth morning, during a break between diplomatic sessions, she finally asked him the question that had been burning in her mind. "Why do you stay?" Marcus turned to face her. His brown eyes met her violet ones without flinching. "Your Highness? You heard me? Why do you stay? I have given you nothing but contempt. I have insulted you in front of powerful beings. I have made clear that I consider you worthless." She stepped closer, genuinely curious despite herself. Any rational being would have requested reassignment. Any creature with pride would have left. Yet you remain. Why? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering her question with the seriousness it deserved. "With respect, Your Highness, my duty is not contingent on your approval." "What does that mean?" "It means that I am here to keep you safe. That is my job. That is my purpose on this station. Your opinion of me does not change that purpose." Valeth frowned. "But I have been cruel to you, yes? And you do not care?" "I care, Your Highness. I am not without feelings. But feelings do not change duty. You are under my protection. I will protect you. It is as simple as that. Even though you know I think your species is beneath mine." For the first time, Marcus showed a hint of emotion. The corner of his mouth twitched upward in what might have been a smile. "I have heard worse from my drill sergeants, Your Highness. Human military training is not gentle." Valeth stared at him, trying to understand this strange creature. In her world, service required respect. Loyalty required reciprocity. The idea of protecting someone who despised you was not just strange. It was impossible. Yet here he was. "You are a very strange being, Sergeant Cole," she said finally. "I have been told, Your Highness." That night, everything changed. The attack came without warning. One moment, the station was humming with normal activity. The next moment, every light went dark. Emergency systems activated, casting the corridors in dim red light. Communication signals turned to static. Alarms began to wail. Valeth was in the corridor outside her quarters, having just finished a late meeting. Her Kithran guards immediately moved into defensive formation, their silver bodies creating a protective circle around her. They drew their plasma rifles and scanned the shadows. "Stay calm, Your Highness," the guard captain said. "This is likely just a power failure. We will have you back in your quarters momentarily." But something was wrong. Valeth could feel it in her bones. The darkness felt alive, watching, waiting. Her telepathic senses detected something at the edge of perception. Hostile intent. Predatory hunger. Death was coming. The guard captain received a message through his earpiece. His expression shifted to concern. "There is an emergency on Deck 7. Security is requesting all available personnel." "Go," Valeth said. "I have my guards." "I will be fine, Your Highness. Protocol states I am giving you an order. Go help with the emergency. My guards will escort me to my quarters." Captain hesitated, then nodded. He took 4 of the 6 Kithran guards with him, running toward Deck 7. The remaining 2 guards flanked Valeth as they moved toward her. Quarters, they never saw the attack coming. The first guard died instantly. A venomous barb shot from the darkness and pierced his throat. He was dead before he hit the ground. The second guard spun, raising his rifle, but a shadowy form slammed into him from above. Chitin claws tore through his armor. He screamed once and then was silent. Valeth stood alone in the red-lit corridor, surrounded by the bodies of her protectors. 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Vorith, assassins. Their black carapaces gleamed like polished obsidian. Their compound eyes reflected the emergency lights like 1,000 tiny stars. Their venomous barbs dripped with deadly poison. Princess Sindara, the lead assassin, hissed, "Your bloodline ends tonight. The sins of your ancestors will finally be paid." Aleph backed away, her heart's pounding. She had no weapon. She had no guards. She had no way to call for help. The communication systems were dead. She was going to die in this corridor, killed by enemies her people had made long before she was born. Then she heard a sound behind her. Footsteps, calm and steady. Moving toward her rather than away, Marcus Cole stepped out of the shadows. He had been there the entire time, watching, waiting, while the Kithrin guards had rushed to defend. While the captain had taken most of the team away, while everyone else had left their posts, the human had stayed. He had never left her side. He drew his combat knife with one hand and his sidearm with the other. His brown eyes were cold and focused. His body moved into a fighting stance that spoke of years of training. 3 Vorith assassins. Deadly poison. Superior strength. Genetic perfection designed for killing. 1. Human. Small. Fragile. Primitive. The assassins looked at Marcus and laughed. They would not be laughing for long. The first assassin died before it knew Marcus was there. Humans were not fast. Compared to most galactic species, they were slow, weak, and fragile. But humans had learned to compensate. They had studied their enemies. They had found weaknesses. They had turned their limitations into advantages. Marcus Cole had spent 3 months studying Vorith anatomy. He knew their strengths. More importantly, he knew exactly where to strike to kill them instantly. His combat knife found the gap. Between the first assassin's carapace plates, it slid through the nerve cluster at the base of the neck with surgical precision. The creature dropped without a sound, dead before its brain could process what had happened. The other 2 assassins spun toward him, their compound eyes widening with shock. They had expected easy prey. They had expected a terrified princess, and perhaps 1 or 2 guards. They had not expected this small, primitive creature to strike first, to strike fast, to kill with such cold efficiency. Their shock lasted less than a second. Then they attacked. The second assassin lunged toward Valeth, its venomous barbs extended. It was faster than Marcus. It would reach her before he could intercept, so Marcus did not try to intercept. He threw himself directly into its path. The barb meant for Gellis' heart slashed across Marcus's shoulder instead. He felt the chitin blade cut through his armor, through his flesh, down to the bone. Pain exploded through his body like fire. Vorith venom pumped into his bloodstream, burning through his veins. It was not the nerve agent that killed in seconds. This was a paralytic compound, designed to incapacitate victims for later consumption. The Vorith were patient hunters. They liked their prey alive and aware. Marcus should have fallen. Human physiology had no defense against Vorith toxins. Within moments, his muscles should have locked. His body should have become a frozen prison. He should have collapsed at Vilif's feet, helpless to do anything but watch as the assassins killed her. But Marcus Cole was not most humans. Deep in his brain, ancient glands pumped chemicals into his blood. Adrenaline, the survival hormone. The desperate, impossible gift that evolution had given to a species of soft-bodied primates living on a death world. His heart rate doubled. His pain receptors dulled. His muscles filled with desperate strength. The venom fought against his system, trying to shut him down. His body fought back with everything it had. Marcus raised his sidearm and fired. The shot caught the second assassin in its left compound eye. The creature shrieked as half its vision exploded in a shower of ichor and shattered chitin. It stumbled backward, clawing at its ruined face. Marcus fired again, and again, and again. The assassin fell. The third assassin slammed into Marcus before he could turn. They crashed to the ground together, rolling across the cold metal floor. The creature was twice his size, 3 times his strength. Its claws raked across his back, tearing through armor and flesh. Its mandibles snapped inches from his face, close enough for him to smell the death on its breath. Venom continued to spread through Marcus's body. His vision blurred. His movements became sluggish. Every second that passed, he grew weaker. But he did not stop. He had dropped his sidearm in the fall. His knife was pinned beneath him. He had nothing but his hands, his fading strength, and his stubborn human will. It was enough. Marcus wrapped his arms around the assassin's neck, trapping its head against his chest. The creature thrashed and clawed, tearing long wounds across his arms and ribs. Blood poured from a dozen injuries. Pain screamed through every nerve. But Marcus held on. He remembered his training. He remembered the lessons beaten into him through years of brutal practice. He remembered the one advantage humans had against stronger enemies: endurance. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the fastest or the toughest. But they could keep going long after other species had given up. They could push through pain that would break alien minds. They could hold on when holding on was impossible. Marcus squeezed. His muscles burned. His vision went dark at the edges. The venom was winning. He had seconds left before his body failed completely. He squeezed harder. The assassin's struggles grew weaker. Its claws stopped tearing. Its mandibles stopped snapping. It made a wet, gurgling sound as its air supply was cut off. Then it went still. Marcus released the body and rolled onto his back. The corridor spun around him. Every breath was agony. Blood pooled beneath him, spreading in a dark mirror across the metal floor. The venom had spread through his entire system now. He could feel it shutting down his organs one by one. He was dying, but she was safe. Princess Valeth appeared above him, her silver face pale with shock. She had not moved during the entire fight. She had watched as this small, primitive creature had killed 3 Vorith assassins with nothing but training and determination. She had watched as he threw himself into the path of a venomous barb meant for her heart. She had watched him nearly die to save someone who had done nothing but mock him. "Why?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why did you do it?" Marcus tried to speak. His throat was closing. The venom was stealing his voice, along with his life. But he forced the words out anyway. "You are safe," he whispered. "That is good." And then, despite everything, despite the poison in his blood and the wounds on his body and the death that was coming for him, Marcus Cole smiled, his eyes closed. His body went still. Valeth caught him before he hit the ground. She did not know why she did it. Instinct, perhaps, or something deeper. Something she had never felt before. She held this dying human in her arms and screamed for help. Her voice echoed through the empty corridors, desperate and raw. Tears fell from her violet eyes, splashing onto his blood-soaked face. Help. Someone help, please. She who had mocked him now begged for his life. She who had called him worthless now held him like the most precious thing in the universe. She who had never believed in gods now prayed to every deity she had ever heard of. "Do not die," she whispered into his ear. "Do not die. Please. Do not leave me." But Marcus could not hear her anymore. He had slipped into darkness, his human heart beating slower and slower. Fighting a battle it could not win. Help arrived 7 minutes later. 7 minutes of Valeth holding a dying human. 7 minutes of praying for a miracle. 7 minutes that changed everything she believed about humanity and about herself. Marcus Cole woke to the sound of soft breathing. His body felt like it had been torn apart and put back together by someone who had only read about anatomy in books. Every muscle ached. Every wound throbbed. His throat was dry. His head was foggy. And his eyes felt like they had been filled with sand. But he was alive. That surprised him more than anything. Slowly, painfully, he turned his head. The movement sent waves of pain through his neck and shoulders, but he needed to see. He needed to know. Princess Valeth sat beside his bed. She was still wearing the same formal robes from the night of the attack. Her silver hair was tangled and unwashed. Dark circles shadowed her violet eyes. She looked exhausted, broken, nothing like the proud princess who had mocked him just days ago. She had been crying. He could see the dried tear tracks on her cheeks. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was hoarse, like she had not spoken in days. Or like she had been screaming. "How long?" Marcus managed to ask. "The physician said you should have died within minutes. They do not understand how you survived." Marcus tried to remember. Fragments came back to him. The fight. The venom. The darkness closing in. He remembered killing the assassins. He remembered falling. He remembered her face above him, silver and terrified. He remembered smiling because she was safe. "The venom," Valeth continued, "should have paralyzed you instantly. That is what it does to every species we know of. But your body fought it. Your heart kept beating even when it should have stopped. Your muscles kept moving even when they should have failed." She shook her head slowly. "The physicians called it biologically inexplicable stubbornness." "Humans are stubborn," Marcus said. "It is one of our few talents." The words hung in the air between them. Valeth stared at him for a long moment, her violet eyes searching his face, looking for something. He did not know what. Then she asked the question she had been holding for 4 days. Why? Marcus knew what she meant. He had known this question would come. He had thought about how to answer it during the long hours of unconsciousness, in the strange dreams that came with nearly dying. "Why did you do it?" Valeth pressed. "After everything I said to you, after how I treated you, after I called you worthless and primitive and beneath me, why did you nearly die for me? Why did you throw yourself into the path of that barb? Why?" Her voice cracked on the last word. Tears filled her eyes, threatening to spill over. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her. Not at the princess, not at the diplomat, not at the alien who had mocked him. He looked at the person. The being who was trying so hard to understand something that her culture had never taught her. "Your Highness," he said slowly, "I have read about your people, about your wars and your achievements, about your history that stretches back 20,000 years. I understand why you look at humans and see something small. We are small. We are young. We are scared and fragile, and we make mistakes constantly." He paused to catch his breath. Speaking was still difficult, but we have learned something in our short time among the stars. Something that older species seem to have forgotten.
"What?"
The measure of a species is not how old they are. It is not how powerful they are, or how far they have traveled, or how long their history books stretch. The measure of a species is what they are willing to do for someone else. He met her eyes. Even someone who does not deserve it. Even someone who hates them. Even someone who would never do the same in return. Valeth's tears finally fell, tracing silver lines down her cheeks. "You were in danger," Marcus said simply. "That was enough for me." Something broke inside Valeth in that moment. Something ancient and proud and wrong. All her life, she had been taught that humanity was lesser, that they were primitives playing at civilization, that they had nothing to offer the great species of the galaxy. She had been wrong. "I was cruel to you," she whispered. "Yes. I insulted you. I mocked you. I treated you worse than a servant. Yes. And you saved my life anyway." "Yes." She reached out and took his hand. It was a gesture that would have been unthinkable a week ago. A Kithran princess holding hands with a human, showing affection to someone so far beneath her station. But Marcus Cole was not beneath her. She understood that now. He never had been. "Then I have much to learn about humanity," she said. "And perhaps you would be willing to teach me?" Marcus smiled. It hurt his face, but he smiled anyway. "I would be honored, Your Highness." The peace summit concluded 3 weeks later. The Vorith conspiracy was exposed and condemned. Ambassador Kethril was arrested for his role in the assassination attempt. The treaty was signed, bringing an end to generations of conflict. But the real change happened inside Princess Valeth Sandara. She returned to the Kithran Empire with a new perspective on the galaxy. She told her father, the Emperor, about the human who had saved her life. She described how he had fought against impossible odds, how he had absorbed venom that should have killed him, how he had smiled at the moment of his apparent death because she was safe. The Emperor was confused. Humans were nothing special. They were brief flickers in the cosmic timeline. Why would his daughter care so much about one of them? Valeth simply smiled and said, "That is what makes them remarkable, Father. They know how short their lives are, and they spend them protecting others anyway." She submitted a formal request that Sergeant Marcus Cole be assigned as her permanent liaison to humanity. The request was granted. Marcus served at her side for 30 years, guiding her through the complex world of human diplomacy. He taught her about Earth culture, human history, strange and wonderful ways his species had survived their death world. In return, she introduced him to wonders he had never imagined. She showed him stars being born and civilizations that had risen and fallen before humans existed. She gave him access to medical technology that extended his life far beyond normal human limits, but even Kithran medicine could not make a human mortal. Marcus Cole died at the age of 93, old and gray and at peace. Valeth was with him at the end, holding his hand just as she had when he first nearly died for her. His last words were, "Thank you for letting me stay." The Kithran princess wept for 3 days. Then she commissioned a statue in the imperial garden of her homeworld. It showed a human soldier standing at attention, eyes alert, hands ready to serve. It was small compared to the monuments surrounding it. Small but unbroken. The plaque at its base read simply 2 words: "He stayed." Visitors to the imperial garden often ask why such a simple monument exists among the grand statues of Kithran heroes. Guides explain that it honors a human who saved a princess's life. But that explanation never feels complete, because the truth is bigger than one rescue. The truth is about a species that had nothing but stubbornness and heart, a species that protected others because it was right, not because it was rewarded. A species that stayed when staying was hard. That is what makes humanity remarkable. Not their ships or their weapons, their technology. Their willingness to stay, always, no matter what.